It's good.
So I get on the plane.
All right.
I stayed up all night last night, like trying to finish the issue of Southern Bastards. As soon as I sit down, I walk up to aisle 10A, and there's a goddamn baby, like a family with like a infant, and they've already spread out all their shit across the row, and I feel bad because I gotta squeeze past them, and I sit down. And as soon as I sit down, they're apologizing. I think the dad is Canadian because he's super.
It's an impossible scenario as a parent.
And he turns to me and he goes, he's a pretty good traveler or whatever. It'd be all right. Baby turns to me, smiles wide, shit his pants. So right off the bat, I'm like, oh my God. I doze in and out of sleep. I wake up. They've switched seats.
And you see a large bass on
And there's a dog next to me.
It turned into a dog.
Yeah, I was like, did he poop this dog out?
That's a large dog, too. That's not a tiny dog. That's a leash dog.
Right. So in all fairness, dog is quiet the whole trip. Baby doesn't cause any trouble at the end of the trip. The dad's like, thanks for putting up with us. I'm getting off the plane. There was 2 dogs. I was like, is this fucking Gremlins? This baby get wet and pop some dogs out of his back?
Why are we on a Twilight Zone episode?
So then I'm gonna be all profound and go on Twitter and say something about how what do you put out into the universe is what you get back. As soon as I text it, or as soon as I tweet it out, I see this motherfucker. And I'm like, my assassin is here.
Fuck with the wrong two
I
dogs.
put the wrong shit into the universe.
This is a hitman. Got a hitman waiting on you. Casey one time, when Milo was not a year old yet, and he was a little tougher in that first year, but she was flying to meet some friends somewhere, and she was taking Milo, and of course the flights were delayed and everything, and by the time Casey got on the plane, she was texting me already oh no, he's really having a hard time. But I was like, listen, whatever you do, so just get on the plane, sit down, and everybody in all the seats behind you and the seats in front of you, just buy them drinks. Before anything happens, just get up and say, hey guys, I'm sorry for whatever's about to come. If it doesn't, then we're all good. If it does, drinks are on me. And that way because as a parent, man, there is nothing you can do. Your hands are tied. And guess what? We hate it too.
Yeah. When I was younger and was in comics, I used to be like, well, fuck it, that's a choice you make when you have a child.
Don't be putting your choices on me.
Right, yeah. So you want to do this, take all these artistic chances, but you're making excuses because you had a baby. That's a choice you made. I work harder than probably 90% of the people in comics, on a page, or
Sure.
I dig in, But I still have way more, I wouldn't call it free time, but I would say mental,
Mental freedom.
Yeah, my attention span has the ability to sort of expand in a way that I don't think a parent does.
No. Let's take what the video project that you've been doing. That's a thing that can occur to you, and then you can allocate a lot of hours to that in all manner of time slots. Most of my day,
is watching Baxter do it.
And encouraging him to take advantage of his free times in the right way, in the creative ways. But also it's all time slots. It's blocks of time, right? Which is good and bad. It's made me a better comic book maker because when I go to work, I don't fuck around. I can't because I have to be done at this time. Or else my kids start singing Cats in the Cradle and shit when I get home. God, this is weird. I haven't thought about this until you said this. But what you're doing with this project is you're searching for all manner of things, right? And you're learning stuff about others, but more so you're probably learning more about you in the process that you probably didn't know that was going to happen. What I found out, and I never would have known this until you're in it. Because you think going into parenting is about you teaching. That's what you think it's going to be. It's just you finding teaching moments for them and teaching them and teaching them and teaching them. And I find it to almost have been the exact opposite in that, like, he doesn't know, but he's like my two boys are teaching me to do all manner of shit with my life different, in a way where we say this in virtuous ways sometimes, where it's like, oh no, I think of others for the. We're all full of shit, right? Until there's a little person in front of you that will be harmed if you don't truly jump outside of yourself and think of them first. And so that's a weird fucking concept when you really start doing it. When you really are like, I am last in this scenario here. And then what is your thought process? And there's weird elements like that through the day.
Yeah, I think about my mom and my parents a lot, and just I know how much I constantly was like pushing against their belief systems. Sure. And I think that's the thing that I probably miss out the most in not having a kid, is I don't have somebody to basically go like,
call you
why the fuck does this mean this?
Right.
Why do you think that?
Right.
You know, like in a way where I have to be like, if I explain this wrong,
right,
I might fuck this kid up.
Yeah.
You know, whereas like if it's me and you get in an argument, who gives a fuck?
Yeah. We could battle it out or decide to never talk again or whatever, right? There was one interesting moment about a month ago, and my wife Casey and I got into, just an absolutely dumb fight about nothing, and we're just both of us, right, and our kids around, and we finally got to a place, we got over it, and then he's like, why are you arguing, right? He just asked, and you like, in the process of having to give him a honest answer, we both look at each other like, oh, we're idiots. Because you're like, right? Because you literally, when you answer honestly and you say, you know what, I had emotions about a thing, and I reacted poorly with those emotions, and talk to your mom or talk to your dad in a way that wasn't equal to the emotions. It's okay to have emotions. It's okay to be mad, but sometimes it's not super okay to deal with them in the way that we just showed you. And in the moment you realize, like, in the same way that when you got mad that we took your iPad, you turn around, but you're like, holy shit. Like, you learn something even about the way that you deal with your spouse in a way. Like,
yeah, sure.
And in a way that you both hear it. Because that's another thing, right? Like, when you're with someone, it's real easy to be like, just everybody digs heels in. But then there's this kid there that's like, y'all are both full of shit.
I was thinking about that with my grandpa the other day, because my grandpa used to say some wild shit. And one time he told us that he was watching the news and they took a person's brain out of their fucking body and fixed their body and put their brain back in. And so my personality is to go like, what the fuck are you talking about?
You're on some shit, Grandpa.
Yeah. And my brother's like, no, let him keep going.
This is a yes and environment.
Yeah.
This is not a no but.
My brother's like, this is improv.
This
class.
is improv.
Yeah.
This is the groundlings, Jason. Be quiet.
So then I realized, he's just digging in because he's embarrassed.
Right.
Like he's from that old school, I'm the authority figure, I can't be wrong.
Right.
I saw it on the fucking news. So he was digging in a way that and my mom, I was explaining that to my mom, that he used to do that stuff, and that's where I think a lot of that wild shit comes from. My mom goes, yeah, just like you.
And then at that moment you're like, oh my God, she's not wrong.
Fucking nailed me.
Yeah. Is it Fetty Wap? Or is he a guy? This is the official turn for. I just turned 40 when this is the conversation we're going. Does he have braids? Oh my God! So then they did Just Blaze, and he went around to other producers, and would ask them and to each one Large Professor, and watch them layer a beat. So Just Blaze was like. Havoc was a producer that I never understood, because all his stuff is out of tune. Like the bass, everything's not right. And he's somebody who's a musician hears it and goes I just want to go in and tune everything up. But then when you hear it, you're like, it doesn't matter.
That's what I do. My shit is all off kilter.
Right.
you know, but like.
But it works.
But it has a through line, you know, and that's what making art is having a through line.
Yes.
Like, you can try all kinds of stuff and hang a lot of different laundry on the line, but you just gotta know, like, this is bolted down.
Well,
and this leads to this.
Yeah, and you see it, even though, I mean, I've spent a lot of my career by people telling me the same thing, like, that's not right. You know, it's not drawn right. That's not right. Just Blaze saying that made me realize people say that in all art, which is like, there's a certain way you're supposed to be doing it. You're supposed to use the chords in the progressions that you're supposed to use them in, because that's the way it goes, right?
One of the things I always tell people about you, Scotty, is that when people come over and they're like, especially other artists I've known over years, I see them like wanting to tear their eyes out, or they're like, I can't find the right gig. I need to do X, Y, and Z so that the fans will like my version of Batman better, or my Wolverine better. I always point to you and say, he just did what he does. But so I know how it works. Right. But when I first met you, it was interesting that it was how much you actually did stick to your guns. It had to be incredibly difficult at certain points of the way.
Yeah. I found it difficult I could easily look back and say that it was me being very
shrewd.
Yeah, and making these choices for the art,
right?
And doing that, but that would be disingenuous. I genuinely don't have that many styles that I can reach into. I draw kind of this way. Now, I've evolved that over the years, like anybody evolves, but I found it very difficult to even think about trying to be a realistic artist. And when I broke in the first half of my career was spent through the early 2000s, where the most popular style in comics was basically, screenshots of a movie. Very hyper detailed, very realistic, and every panel was that.
Right.
Kind of the old way of drawing comics, where you're insinuating a lot of things, or you're letting the reader fill in things and gaps, and hinting at a background here, and let the reader.
It almost seemed dead.
It was dead, yeah. And I had come up, off of Mad Magazine and things like that. So in the old schools of cartooning, and the Calvin and Hobbes and the Peanuts and all that stuff. So it was a real interesting time for me to be starting my career, where they were giving me jobs and then calling me after giving me the jobs and saying, look, we're going to go ahead and need you to draw a little bit more realistic. Well, maybe a lot more realistic. Yeah. And I remember once, the boss, I'm getting names, but the boss calls me. And
Mr. Marvel.
Mr. Marvel
yeah.
Called me and just said, hey, listen, I love your stuff. I love your stuff more than anybody. It's my favorite kind of stuff. But the industry or the business is this way right now. And, if you're going to make it if we're going to be able to keep pushing this forward, we're going to need you to jump on the side that's working for everybody. And it was that scary moment where I could have done what we usually do, is say okay and then try to fake my way through it.
Oh yeah.
Which was tempting, because I wasn't in a financial place to be like throwing up my fingers. Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But I also wasn't in a place where I felt comfortable being able to draw like that. And it was like, I just made the decision that day, and I said, I'm not telling you this to be difficult. I'm not a diva. I am just not as talented as you think. And I'm not down on myself. Jason will tell you, I'm not.
Oh no.
But I'm also very honest. I'm very self-aware. I just said, I'm not that talented. I'm not Stuart Immonen, right? Like, I'm not the god of comic books.
Right.
And I'm going to their credit, so it's not sounding like I'm demonizing the company or anybody. To his credit, after our conversation, he said, okay. Like, I said, I have to do this. Go read the script. If after you read the script that was given to me, you think that this needs a more realistic than cartoony style, there will be no drama. You can replace me on the book. I'll go figure out what to do next. And to his credit, he read the script. He called me back and said, draw it however you want. And it was one of those moments.
The hardest and best decisions I've ever made in my comics career were looking Mr. Marvel or Mr. DC in the eye
Right.
and saying no.
Yeah.
It was the hardest,
No,
scariest.
it's like painful.
Yeah, especially early on when you're like, this is not a bad job that you're offering me.
Right.
It's just not what I'm made to do or what I'm ready to do or what I even want to do.
Sometimes you don't even know what your plan is. You don't even know what you want to do, but when you hear it, you know at that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I admit I've been in a situation where I react and say something, and it's, you know, in a very polite way, and like much like you address them, but you know deep down inside you can't do that. I feel like in art there is a large amount of honesty that goes into your work,
Yeah.
and if you're going to sit there and push your pen a different way that doesn't feel right, that's a huge thing to wrestle with.
You know,
Yeah.
that is a part of being an artist too, I think, is that while we're scared, while we can be insecure, while we can be egomaniacal, we can be all the things. At the end of the day, when you were a kid and you put a pencil to paper and draw, you are doing so to share an idea with one or more people.
Right.
However that is. So I think even in those moments where we think, there's always a weird thing in the back of our head that said
It'll be fine.
it's gonna get out
Yeah.
there at
Yeah,
some
exactly.
point. We're gonna be good because this is what I was put here to do.
Right.
Yeah.